overnight. Still within error. The election is pretty much here. So I just want to wrap up. So yesterday, suddenly the polls, the odds, the betting markets jumped down, plunged, which confused me because I was going from what I was hearing, from Twitter, from finance news, whatever. The momentum seemed to be with Trump. Clinton was flying over to what were traditionally very safe states because she was worried. Like now they were vulnerable. We looked at the Real Clear Politics and the vast bulk of the states had shifted towards Trump. So, if they were favored Clinton, then they suddenly became neutral. If they were neutral, they were now favoring Trump. If they were safe Clinton, they became likely Clinton. So across the board, the signals were pretty clear. And of course, the fact that the polls had Clinton with a 5-6% lead, which was now down to 1.8, which is within error. So, firstly, the odds are better now for Trump than they were. So, he was actually back up to 6 yesterday. I was sitting there going, oh, where'd that come from? Then I kind of went, look, the data is still holding. The only thing that changed, from what I could make out, was the statement by the FBI guy, Comey. But that, to me, shouldn't be everything. Surely have people not heard about WikiLeaks and the associated disastrous news flow on the Clinton side? I would have thought, this is not relying on the FBI thing. So I added to the bet. I got in, added 5 more at 5.8. And it's now 5.3. It was a couple of days ago at 3.4. You can see, because I thought at that stage, I'll kick myself if I don't add a bit more at 3.4, since it was just falling so rapidly. How times change. So, what's the point? Well, then I was going, it's 5.4 and there's no time. That's a clear signal. That's pretty clear that Clinton's going to win. I was, I suppose, kind of thinking about this before I made the 5.8 bet. But then I went through in my mind what I'd actually seen. This is me personally, not looking through databases and reading a book, which might have an agenda, I don't know. But what had I experienced? Well, then I thought, actually, I remember that EU treaty, was it the Nice, the Lisbon? That was an absolute banger. So, where did it go? I think it was the Nice Treaty. Yeah. So the Nice Treaty was, one of the treaties in Ireland. If you want to change your constitution, you have to have a referendum. So every time the EU did something, I think Ireland was the only country that had to have a vote. So all the other places, like the UK, the Parliament passed it. So the citizens never heard about it, never knew what had changed, what was being done. While in Ireland, for every referendum, we'd go through the process of the radio programmes, the debates, the TV programmes, the run-up, and then the election. So there were multiple referendums or referenda, and Ireland was, in a way, the darling of Europe, because the Irish economy at that stage was absolutely booming, and it was the place which was voting and approving each of the changes. So, it was the most credibility. That it was the only place where it was not being done behind the scenes, hidden from the citizens. But then came the Nice Treaty, and this was totally assumed. There were three things on the same day. So the first one, Constitution, what was it? Well, it doesn't really matter. It's about not having the death penalty. I mean, each of the topics are, of course, important, but for this video, I just want the Nice Treaty. And it was no. Now, the government and the parties had barely campaigned. It was an absolute sure thing. So we didn't really have to have as much of a heated debates or radio programs or TV programs and stuff. I mean, this was just a formality. I remember that one because I bet that Ireland was going to vote yes. Because I went, ooh, brilliant. I can make 20%. I mean, it was something like 5-1. I can make 20% tax-free in a week or in a day. That's pretty good. So, again, fortunately, the amounts I'm betting were a couple of euro. Maybe it was €5 for this one. So, it was big. But, the idea was that this was... Who's the idiot betting on the other side? I mean, it's an absolute certainty. But it was a no. They did... we had another referendum afterwards. Because this was, you've got the 20... I don't know how many countries there were in 2001. It might be 20-something. Could have been 15. Ireland was the only one that was holding it up. No was not defined. So it wasn't as if yes meant it's approved. I mean, yes meant it was approved. No meant what do we do? So it was chaotic. But in the end, we had another referendum. So it was basically the same one. I mean, I think they said, we addressed some concerns, and because the turnout hadn't been that high, because since everyone assumed that it was going to be a yes. Amongst the no votes, they went out and they campaigned and they got everyone out. So their turnout was far higher. That was one of the issues, one of the things that people identified afterwards. They also noticed that actually men had voted yes, women had voted no. That had not been noticed. I mean, basically, I think at the time, the cabinet, all the people involved, they were either all men or largely men. And so when they would have talked amongst themselves and go, are there any issues? They'd go, no. Yeah, that think we've got everything sorted. But they hadn't noticed that women are more than half the voters, and they hadn't checked, hadn't heard from women what their feelings on the matter were, because if they had, they would have noticed that actually there was a strong no coming down the line. So that's what happened here in Ireland, and on the only one of the examples that I actually voted in. But the point being that I have seen elections, not just, like a referendum, big national, big build-up, important, where the odds were at least 5-1. And both the bookies were wrong, all the political correspondents and hacks were wrong. You would not have heard anyone say that there was no talk, no possibility of a no. But it was. So that would be, in my experience, some guy was saying, or our punters idiots, or like why would you bet on Trump? Because the odds, everything says he's going to lose. But I know that doesn't mean he is going to lose. And I would feel equally stupid if I didn't, just because everyone it's a case of emperor's new clothes. I mean, if just because everybody says, or your friends say, oh, he's not going to win, that doesn't mean he's not going to win. It becomes attractive at a price. I wouldn't bet on him to win at evens, at 50-50. I'd only double your money. But at 5.4, that's interesting. And also, I'm not staking large amounts. I wouldn't bet my pension or bet my life savings or whatever on this. It's not like a most recommended investment, but it's a reasonable bet. So, and we've looked at this before. Remember, at the start, you were able to get 100-1 on Trump. 100-1. So if you'd bet on that, you'd be going, oh, you're an idiot, he's not going to win. But I mean, if you bet like €50 at 100-1, now it's even 5. You can hedge your bets so that either way you win. So that would have been a fantastic bet. I mean, if I would have been going on about that if I'd made it. I'd add though that I did look at I think we can look that here. There was very little money actually bet at that. So look, somebody bet at 1,000-1. So there was 1,500. I think that's the amount that was the total. I'm not sure what that number is. No, if that's only €2, that could be €2 that was bet. No, that's the thing, sorry. So the right hand column is the actually matched bets. Does it say here? Yeah, traded. So we go down here and we find that the best odds anybody got was 110. And there was €38 bet at that. So it's not as if you could have bet €100 or something on it. I mean, there wasn't enough people on the other side of the bet. I just want to look at the. So it's gone up a little bit from the bottom, but things are not, as I said, great. I mean, it's an outside bet. So we've talked about the fact that rare events happen, and not just in the abstract, have happened in my life. I also bet that Obama would beat Clinton. Who was going to be the nominee. I only did that because I was watching the TV and they were just talking as if Clinton had already won. And I kind of went, that could be interesting. And actually, funnily enough, I think the odds were 6-1. That people thought, that Clinton was a sure thing. And of course, she lost. So that's 2 examples in my own life where I've actually bet, and one by following the rank outsider. I covered Brexit a lot on this channel, on the Quant channel. So, that was the first case of trying to apply my Quant, my numerical data science and high power techniques to see whether, what would it tell me? Where, was there a niche there? Was there an opportunity? Were things being mispriced? Was there easy money? There, I backed the favour. I backed the yes vote because I thought surely it's going to be yes. I couldn't see any argument for no. All the media, all the TV, everything was saying no. Though, except the polls, actually. The polls were slightly yes. The betting market was very confident it was going to be yes. Oh, sorry. The polls were suggesting no by a couple of percent. But people were kind of dismissing that. They were kind of going, as was I, saying that, well, as the election gets nearer, there's normally a shift towards the status quo. So, that. So we can dismiss what the polls are saying. So that's the example where I bet money, and there I bet maybe 50 or €100, a lot more than the earlier ones. Also, I was just reading this book, The Rise and Fall of Nations. There they had an interesting point where he was mentioning that after the 2007-8 kind of crash, how there's been a wave of change. So that basically, normally, the party in power wins 2/3 of elections. But since 2008, it's flipped. The party in power loses 2 out of every 3 elections. And that wave has been going across the world. So, with those things, I'd kind of go, okay, that global wave that's kind of when Brexit voted no. That this we've the whether in each area the specifics are different, but the status quo have not. We've had enough of the status quo. They've basically created. They've allowed certain elites who they totally back, and they've left large parts of the country to ruin. This would be very much the debate for Brexit, and that's kind of what Trump is saying. He's pointing out that, look, Detroit, you had there used to be huge car manufacturing, and now they've left that. Huge unemployment. As he'd say, it's a disaster. I mean, that's exactly the message that you should be saying, given the current climate. So that's basically where I'm coming from. Those are the themes and ideas that are floating around. We'll see what actually happens. Also remember that the best predictor, and I've been talking about that a fair bit on this channel, was the stock market. I mean, if the stock market fell in 3 months before the election day, then the current government gets replaced. And that has been right 86% of the time, which is incredible. So it is a fight between, on the one hand, you've got these signals telling you it's going to be Trump. You've got the betting markets telling you it's going to be Clinton. That's what makes a market. And remember to vote if you're in the States, because if you don't vote, then other people will determine what happens.